people saw it as like, oh my gosh, you're such a good blah, blah, blah. And, because I would do like perfectionism, because you need that in the ICU in a sense. You need like accuracy, you need this, but it was like this mask. And as I healed, I said, oh, I don't need to do that. Like, I don't feel the need to have everything in a row. And it was very freeing, actually.
Yeah.
Yes. And that was my transition from ICU to where I am now, which is outpatient. Like, it's just a different world.
Welcome back to the Mind Change Podcast. I'm your host, Heather McKean. And before we get started, please take a minute to like, share, download, subscribe, all those fun things that help us to continue to create all this wonderful free content for you and for the others. Today we have another special treat, one of my dearest friends and colleagues, Victoria Yamaguchi. Hi.
Hey, aloha.
Aloha. Yes.
From Maui.
So just a disclaimer here. You
Yes.
are operating on very little sleep.
Uno, dos, tres, un, deux, trois, and ichi, ni, san. So 3 hours.
3 hours of sleep. Thank you. I feel really grateful that you decided to spend some of your time with us on
Yes.
such little sleep.
That's okay.
So why don't you just give a brief introduction to people? Let us know who you are, where you're from.
Okay. I currently reside on the island of Maui. I was born in Guam. My dad was in the military for forever. I was 3 years old. We moved to California. I lived there for 15 years, and then I moved to Hawaii. So I've been there for 30 years now. So that's how I keep track of my age.
And
49.
your profession?
And my profession. So I worked 8 years in pediatrics, another 8 years in ICU, so intensive care. And then I'm currently working outpatient with oncology, like cancer patients. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So we met
Yes.
on Maui, and I'm forever grateful for you. You were one of my first
grateful
and
for
fastest
you.
friends there. But how did you come? I mean, obviously you know me.
Yes.
So you were there while I was writing the book and everything like that. But how did you really personally feel like you came to the mind change work?
Okay. So before you were introducing your work, it was the beginnings of it. I had been forever like doing self-searching, self-improvement, just ways to better myself, whether it's meditation or reading books, like tons of books, Dr. Carolyn Leaf, Joe Dispenza, Bessel van der Kolk, Daniel Siegel, everything, like all across the board. And it was, I believe, I forget what year it was, the pilot of Mind Change was first started in Virginia. And that kind of opened up a chapter and an interest. And I'm very like science-based and logic in my mind. So it took a while to just kind of understand the whole method. But when I did, it was like a light bulb. And it took a while for me because it's 2023 now.
Yeah.
And I would say probably maybe 2022, the trip to Belize, totally just did something.
Yeah, you came to one of our retreats.
Yeah, and that was amazing because although I'm a mom, a wife, my profession, a daughter, all those things, I was able to just completely focus solely on myself and me. And there was things, and because I had that safety and that time dedicated, there was just a lot of things that I was able to heal and work on. So although I've known you on Maui, and just there was this progression, it really wasn't until then that, I don't know, a light bulb clicked. Mm-hmm.
Now, I love your story uniquely because
Yes.
you are not one of these like, I was really sick or I was really had all this, traditional big T trauma, or that you were really having any what would have seemed like outside signs of need
Yeah.
to come to something like this.
Mm-hmm.
And yet you found yourself engaging with it over, in little ways here and there over time.
Yes.
So I love that because
Mm-hmm.
I would say your perspective has just been one of leveling up,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like doing what you can, where you can to just live your best life.
Yes.
And so how do you feel like how mind changes fit into that for you?
Okay, well, like as you've said, like I've like prided myself in like, well, I don't get sick, and how do I relate to this, But again, it wasn't until Belize that I was sick internally, like in my mind, and the way my mind looped to certain things and what my core beliefs were, and that resonated and that encroached into my relationships, with my daughter, my husband, and those very close around me. So it was interesting to see that. So although like maybe physically it wasn't there, the body keeps score, like it didn't show up in those ways. It definitely showed up in relationships. Yeah. And again, it was going to the retreat to be able to have that soul moment and time to just dig in there and be vulnerable and heal.
Would you mind sharing like some of the things that you were seeing in your relationships, maybe with your husband or your daughter, or because that's where you were really seeing it? And that's, if it doesn't come out physically in our body, that's often where we see it is in relationships.
Okay, so when the first thing I think about with daughter and husband, I think of like before I used to be very controlling, like why are the socks on the ground? Like why is that not like in the middle and centered? I think you worked with me on this a long time ago. So we have this white couch and there's this pillow that has to be like where it has to be. And it was a sense of controlling my outward environment because inside there was a lack of. There was a core belief of wanting to control things that I probably believed that I couldn't, or and I remember you had worked with me on that. This was years ago, and now the pillow is like all over the place. It doesn't it doesn't have to be centered. But yeah, what was the question again?
The things that you were showing up in your relationship.
Yes. Okay. So that was a lot of it. Or like, the helicopter mom, like you think you're being a good mom by like, okay, if I prepare all this and I have this algorithm, if this happens and this happened, but that was coming, now that I know, that was coming more from a survival response versus let's prepare, and do this. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when it comes to making others like feel the wrath or fury, then something is a little off there, something's a little off. And then when people feel that, it's like, oh, there's something, you have to think about that and think like what is it in me that I feel like that I have to respond that way.
So you were seeing it in kind of helicopter parenting,
yes,
control,
yes, not
only over people but things in your environment.
Yeah.
So here's the danger of me knowing you long term.
What?
So I would love to hear what you would think about this, because the thing that people sometimes don't understand about mind change is it changes so much that we can very often not even forget, but even just not believe that we were in a certain place before, or that something was a problem that used to be maybe a major problem. So let me just ask you how you felt like your relationship was with anger maybe in the past.
Oh, it was like my best friend almost. It was like my go-to, and it was and I didn't know where that even came from or where it sprung from, because we have these like trauma imprints that are in us that are always wanting to be released and always want to be known. And they will encroach, let out, evade every part until it's out there, whether it's through speech or action or, just, So it was.
So you weren't an angry person.
No.
But
I would have like fits of rage. And if you see me, I'm like, hi, like you wouldn't think I would have.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't have fits of rage where I'm like throwing things and breaking things, but it was in there. I could feel it. So I'm going to do like the nurse part. I could feel the catecholamine surge. I could feel like my palms getting sweaty. And again, it was like a survival. I was on a survival mode, and for various core belief reasons, yeah, that I've been able to work through with mind change throughout the years, and I've seen that kind of dissipate, and so I'm really proud,
As you should be,
in that sense, and and like that, along with just anxiety too. I didn't even know that, because I didn't even know that that was even what I was doing, like, prepping till the degree, and and just having everything in order, and
yeah, because you didn't present as an anxious person.
No. What people represent is like, oh, you're so prepared. But in my mind, it was like an anxiety. It was like, oh, if this happens, I need to have this. If she gets a cut, I need to have a newborn. And like I said, there's nothing wrong preparing, but when it comes from a core belief of trauma, like that, those trauma imprints, then you kind of put that on others, and they feel it.
Now that served you really well
Mm-hmm.
in the ICU.
Yes. And I think that's where I think that's why subconsciously I was drawn to that, because I could control the 10 IV pumps. I could control the ventilator. I could, and there was little room for error or margin in that profession, specifically in that. So I thrived in that. But I remember, so Sachi, my daughter, was turning like her preteen years, and I was having this conversation with you, and I said, I don't know if I should stay in the ICU, if I should transition to outpatient. I remember, I'll never forget, you said, well, what's your like main reason for wanting to stay? And just thinking about that overnight, and thinking like, as I healed, I didn't feel the need to exert, I want to call it trauma imprints, into my profession, because that was like almost like a masked way, if you will, to get that out in that sense. But people saw it as like, oh my gosh, you're such a good blah, blah, blah. And, because I would do like perfectionism, because you need that in the ICU, in a sense. You need like accuracy, you need this, but it was like this mask. And as I healed, I said, oh, I don't need to do that. Like, I don't feel the need to have everything in a row. And it was very freeing, actually.
Yeah.
Yes. And that was my transition from ICU to where I am now, which is outpatient. Like, it's just a different world.
Right. Well, you're a different person.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was such an interesting thing to watch. And I'm just going to loop it back to that, because this is the way that our brain works.
Yeah.
That you spoke earlier about part of the way that you control in you were controlling in relationships, and the way you needed your home to be was because you kind of felt out of control.
Yeah.
And we're going to track that back in a second.
Okay.
But the ICU really helped stay in alignment with that, because you were doing perfectionism and control, but in a chaos environment.
Yes.
So you kept being attracted to and pulled to chaos.
And that is what's the most craziest thing, is that whole subconscious. Like, we are driven by that subconscious, whether you choose to believe it or not. We are so driven, whether like it's the profession you choose, it's, it's whether it's, I don't know, but I feel like it's like the backseat driver. And until that's brought to the forefront, there's a reason why we do things, the reason why we choose our partners, the reason why, because it's those, and had I known, like, maybe, I don't know, X amount of years, like, I probably would have chose something different, Right. Yeah, because the subconscious, you don't know it's there. And that's what I love about the mind change, because there is like those different modalities that I had sought out. So Dr. Carolyn Leaf, talks about 21-day detox, and mind change is like that. It happens like in a session or two. Joe Dispenza talks about the pineal gland and deep breathing and accessing the vagus nerve and all those things. And I sought all those things out. But what I loved about mind change in particular, it was a lot of those modalities, like, all kind of packaged nicely into one, I don't know how to say it, but one easy,
Yes, and like a pretty easy method, even though it does take some effort.
It takes effort.
Yeah, but it's a fairly easy method when we're taking all the good stuff from all those things.
Yes.
So then let me ask you really personally, if you don't mind, what was the chaos that you were staying in alignment with? Like when you got back into your childhood and worked on some of those things, what were the memories that you finally, understood were driving those things?
For me, this is what in Belize, I remember working with Mackenzie, one of your practitioners, and she had a box of tissue, and I'm like, "What's that for?" I literally was like, "What is that for?" And she's like, "Oh," she goes, "I don't know. I'm just gonna bring it." I'm like, "Okay." And literally at the end of that session, like every tissue was gone. It was like scattered on the ground. But that it had to do with abandonment. My parents had got divorced at a pivotal age, my preteen years. I was 9 years old. And from there was just this looping of, because he had an affair and, married somebody else. And in my mind, it's like, oh, were we not like good enough? And were we, it's that whole looping and that whole cycle and that whole, so that's where that had stemmed from. And when I had realized just that, and how I could go back in my memories and retrieve just those deep subconscious things, feeling it, reliving it, and just like scratching that CD with the mind change and the techniques and the interruptions. Once I was able to do that, there was so many like great memories that happened after that. That's where all the tissue went to, was the great, was the good versus like, oh, I know this happened, but it was really like, I didn't even remember that one, and just having that connection, And although my father's no longer here, like I still feel that connection, and it was changing.
Yeah. And that's beautiful too, because you were able to do a lot of that work, and even some work with stuff with around mom too, before mom passed.
Yes.
Right. So with both of your parents getting a little bit more access to those happy, wonderful times before they left the earth, right? Yeah. Okay, it's really what I love about your story. But you've mentioned your journey took a long time, even though we lived in the same place and we were friends.
Yes.
So what was it that kind of kept you involved? And then you said Belize was the moment you really dove in. Okay. But what was it that was keeping you kind of involved and continuing to do the work kind of in the background?
What kept me involved was, I think for me, I felt like the difference with mind change was you had the power within. It's a matter of seeking it out and doing the work. Because you can't just sit there with the, and be like, okay, come to me, change, there's there's that combination, and when that happens, that internal diatribe goes away, that hateful speech, that insecurity, all those things, because you really go to, like I said, the subconscious, where things lie deep below the amygdala, where the unconscious lies, but that comes to the forefront somehow through the sessions. Not somehow. I know how, because, so module 1, module 2, that's what...
and you're talking about the online courses.
I'm talking about the online courses, yes. And it really... Module 1 was amazing. Module 2 was a game changer. Yeah, it was a game changer because I learned about safety within myself. So autonomic nervous system, my primal responses to my external environment. Is this response needed right now? So my husband, Jock, leaves a sock on the floor. I'm like, heart rate goes up. My palms are sweaty. And then I look at him like, it's a sock. I'm like, is that response needed? Is there a bear? Do I need that sympathetic fight or flight? And I'm like, no. So then I shelf it. I'm like, okay, let's think about that. Why did I have that? Because that response was not needed for the sock. And that ties in with the whole anger. So there was these little things that kept showing up where I was like, oh my gosh, this is brilliant. So in module 2, you talk about that, it talks about learning about safety, the autonomic nervous system. And I love even how in sessions, how you say, take a deep breath. I was just like, that makes sense. And it's not just to breathe, like, take a deep breath. It's like, take a deep breath. We have 13 cranial nerves. One of the nerves is the vagus nerve. It's the wanderer that goes from here to your carotid, to your heart, to your internal organs down here. And when you do take that deep breath, even through sessions, I'm like, this is brilliant. It slows down the heart rate. It puts you in a calm state, almost like in that alpha theta state, of mind. And I only know that because when I would float to the emergency room, the doctors would use a vasovagal. They would say, okay, we're going to do a vasovagal maneuver. They would tell the patients, they'd hook them up to the heart monitor, and they'd say, blow through that straw. So when you ask someone to take a deep breath and you exhale out, they're really compressing on that vagus nerve. So you'd see their heart rate go from 180, 170. So in module 2, when I read all that, I was like, this is ingenious. Like, she's a genius. Because you did you had the Stephen Porges, the Deb Dana, the pineal gland, it talks about all that. And for me, I'm a very science-based too, so it took a while. It took a while. Because I remember even your first pilot in Virginia, I said, Heather, is this like quackery? Like, what is this? And it took a while, but really it was module 2. That was groundbreaking for me, because it just had all those like great resources. Yeah.
So
that you
someone
put together.
who's been involved in the medical community for many, 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 many years,
Yeah.
Do you see this as being opposed to a medical mindset, or how do you view that?
It depends who I talk to. It depends who I talk to. Yeah. So, and it's ironic because the longer I do this, the more I'm just like, maybe I don't want to do nursing because I don't even like to poke people, like give an injection. But some people will, if they're in the medical field, be like, well, show me the proof, or show me. And what's great is like the resources that you do have and that we do practice. Like I said, whether it's from Dr. Stephen Porges, Deb Dana, Bessel van der Kolk, Dr. Dan Siegel, all those, Carolyn Leaf, it's like all those like nicely packaged into the mind change method, I think. So I just say, read the book. And when they do, they're like, oh, okay, you have to read it and experience yourself. And you have to, I think people have to be ready themselves and have that. You have to have that within you. Like, I can't simply like be like, oh yeah, it's this. Like, they have to have it within them, ready for that or open to that. Yeah.
So do you find for you personally,
Yeah.
having been drawn to the medical field and helping other people,
Yeah.
that this is like a good companion to what you already know?
Yes. I mean, I do love science. I love the medical field for like tertiary things. Like, you break a bone, you get a cast. But as far as like, I can openly say this, I'm opposed to medication. I don't really believe in that in medication. I believe that we do have that power in our mind to access those like chemicals. And that's just my
and medication
personal.
can be a bridge at times.
Medication can be a bridge, yes. But I feel like again, like the body keeps score. There's things in there. There's things that are imprinted that need healing and that wants out. And medication can be a bridge, and it could be a mask for things, and the underlying root is still there. Yeah.
And you have a colleague as well who's interested in the mind change, who does that I've heard that there's certain things that you guys feel like have made you better at your professions.
Yeah.
Questions that you ask in a way to listen to people that has even helped. Would you say that that's true?
Definitely. Yes. So honestly, a lot of the patients that come in don't even know why they're getting things. Like, I'm like, why are you getting this? Like, shot for osteoporosis. Like, oh, because the doctor told me. And I'm like, is that good enough? I said, but why? Like, did you ask? And, and just to open that conversation to make them think, yeah, why am I doing that? And I think it's always good to have that dialogue and have the conversation and not be afraid to ask things. And as a nurse, I just always give them an option. I said, well, unless you get more information or you feel good about it, I always tell them, you don't have to take it. I said, this is my job and I'm going to give it. But I always say, but you're the boss. I said, you can decide to have it or not. Yeah.
And don't you find sometimes people are coming in maybe more for what they might be able to get on a personal level from a nurse or a doctor? They
Definitely.
Just want to be listened to.
Yes. So in nursing, we have this whole class on therapeutic communication. Totally.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
do you feel like the mind change has helped you with that?
Yes. Yes, because I feel like in like I just give like subtle glimmers is what I want to call it. Just things to think about, for themselves. And we sit there and listen, but at the same time, I like to just give like little glimmers too, and like have them ask questions, and just have to get that process going. Yeah, that it's not all about um I'm going to do this because so and so told me to.
So
Yeah.
what you're speaking about is something we've talked about a lot in this, but is agency, where the power is put back inside of
Yeah.
us, right? One of the most, I think, damaging things around maybe our current westernized medical program
Yeah.
is where people are putting the power of their own lives often in the
Into
hands of other
others. Yeah.
people. And doctors and nurses and stuff, that's a lot of pressure
Yeah.
to not just have to get everything perfect medically, but also when people are giving that much authority
Yeah.
over that kind of, that gets a little bit
Yeah.
intense.
And that's where I kind of bring it back to them. I said, hey, I said, you're the boss. I always say, you're the boss. I said, I am like here to administer it, but do you know enough about it? Do you want a handout? Do you want to have further conversation with your doctor? Yeah. So I love that, because I do believe that there is that part where we do have that power within to heal ourselves.
So you talked about before that kind of helicopter controlling and outbursts of anger.
Yeah.
How do you feel like things have changed with you and maybe your relationship with your family?
Oh my gosh. Well, I feel like even seeing my teenage daughter who's 16, I feel like she's such a cycle breaker in many ways. And I feel like that is attributed to the healing that I did receive. Because if I look at her now and I look at her, I don't know when she was 10 or whatnot, she's different. And I feel like we unknowingly, even as parents, the best we know how to, we unknowingly imprint our trauma on them.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, it's not an isolated thing that you can keep, no matter how much you want to try to keep it in your own little safe box. It's like, what is that movie where the black stuff comes out and it encroaches and it starts? Is it The Grudge? I forget.
Oh.
But anyways, it's where everything just it gets out somehow.
Yeah.
And it's ugly, and sometimes we need to befriend that ugly and be like, okay, come out. Let's see what's there. Instead of trying to like fit it nicely and put it away and make it look all nice, it's just like let's bring it out and see what it wants. And I feel like that's what mind change does on a very subconscious level. It says, come over here. Like it says, come over here. What do you want?
Yeah, why are you here? What's going on?
Why are you here? What's going on? And to pay attention to that. Because in society, even today, we're so, and I was in society, we're so like, no, we have to, everything's good. Everything's whatever it is, right? But I feel like we have to learn to do that and bring that to the forefront and do more of that. And I feel like mind change does that as well. Yeah.
You are one of my favorite friends to talk metaphor with.
Yes.
Like you just get metaphor. And you made such a beautiful connection one time with the movie Moana.
Oh, yeah.
About the island.
Yeah.
So any of you who've not seen Moana, for various reasons, if you just go even for this one point, right? And maybe you can illustrate or remind us what you were talking about with that.
Okay, so Moana is looking for the heart of Tafiti. Yeah. So it's this heart that was misplaced, and she like searches for it, goes on this journey, and finally she finds it, but it's in the heart of this like volcanic monster. But that's such a metaphor because sometimes we are that Tafiti, like we have that ugly in us that people are like, no, like even like, women with makeup, let's cover it up. Let's make it look nice. So Tafiti is like this monster, this volcanic, thing that wants to erupt. It wants to come out. And so here she is, and she comes like head to head with Tafiti. And Yeah, it's so funny. So in Hawaii, aloha is when you touch face to face, and there's that one scene where they touch face to face, and that means like the breath of life, right?
Moana and the monster,
Yes, and
right?
the
Yeah.
monster. So it was telling because she says, I've traveled the world to find you. And then she says, the world, they took your heart, but this does not define you. So in many ways, we define ourselves with our core beliefs, with our upbringing, with whatnot. But she says, but you're more than that. I know who you are. And I think it's important for us to know who we are. Like who we are, because I know my parents, I know my grandparents, I know my great grandparents, but do I know the people before that and before that? So we're 1,000 years in the making. And so it's great to even like go to a subconscious level and have those core beliefs come up and bring them to the forefront and even befriend them.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's not as scary. We
'Cause
think it's this volcanic, monstrous thing that might be, hovering underneath.
Yeah, and people are afraid of that. People
Yeah.
are afraid of the ugly because they just want to see Moana with the flowy hair and la la la. But it's very metaphoric because Tafiti was this volcanic, ugly, like don't get near me. She's very protective. She's throwing like fire bombs at people.
Yeah, what did they call her? Because Tafiti was the island in the original thing, and then it was
Teka.
Teka. Like people thought
But
Teka
who was she? Really?
Yeah, it was
she
actually
was
Tafiti, right?
Yes, yeah. So that's what I love about that, and I think that's who we are. I think that is who we are. We are that, and eventually, whether it's external circumstances, whether it's stories we were told, whether it's whatever it is, like we become hardened by those things, and I feel like mind change is that little rock that says, okay, this doesn't define you. And to come face to face, like what they, like in the cartoon, they came face to face. And she came face to face with it. She came face to face. She wasn't like trying to defend it or fight it. She came face to face and says like, what do you want? I know you.
I got goosebumps. Because I'm remembering the scene where Moana just pushes through the fire and we have to be that for ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah. So you've done that. You went face to face with Taka. In your own life. Yes. And then found that actually you are.
Yeah. Tafiti. And everybody is.
Everybody is.
Everybody's. And I think that is the beauty of that, is because you give power back to that. You give power back to, the resources like within you. And you happen to ingeniously put all those things together. Like I keep saying that, but it was ingenious. When I did the module 2, I was just like, how on earth did she do this?
I know Heather. How did she do this?
No, because it's like, it wasn't, like you said, it wasn't just this and this. It wasn't just like yoga or the somatic or this. It was like everything put into one. So it was awesome.
Well, I love that. And I think that one of the most powerful things about meeting ourselves and understanding that even though we've been volcanic and monstrous at times, when we meet ourselves and we do some healing, I don't know about you, but I have found it has changed the way I see others.
Totally, yes. And remember Tafiti, after like she like brought like flowers to others after, and she was able to like just give who she was, like that was her nature. Like remember, like things like the flowers sprung up and the grass was all green, and then people even benefited from that. And I think when we do change one mind at a time, even if I just change myself, even if I don't change anybody else and I change me, like I feel like that still will make a ripple effect. As long as I'm on the earth here, like I have made a difference in that way. So that's what I truly love about that. Yeah.
So what would you say to someone out there listening who's like, yeah, I'm kind of like you. I really want the science to work for this. And I'm a little like, is this quackery? What would you say to them?
I would say take just a quiet moment and reflect on what you want, like how you see your higher self, whatever that is. Like if you had that magic wand, I would say, look at that. And from there, read the book.
Yeah.
I don't know how to also say that, but I would say read the book and do the module 1, module 2. Because, like I said, I've tried so many things, and this is the one thing that I feel like has changed me. You could ask my daughter too.
Yeah.
And that's telling, because when people tell you that you changed it versus yourself, I'm like, oh, okay, that's a
Your
good
daughter
thing.
has. I
Yeah.
have the honor and privilege of having her as my
Yeah.
daughter's best friend,
Yay.
and adore her beyond words. And she has talked to me about you and how much,
Mhm.
just how close she is to you, how much she trusts you, how wise you are, how she's like, I'm so close to my mom. Whatever she says these days, I just do, because like there's that connection.
Yeah.
And yet it's so interesting that you recognize and go back to your trauma being right around 9.
Yeah.
And that
yes.
was, I think, maybe the pinnacle of your
That
control.
was, yeah.
Right, where
Mhm.
I got to meet Sachi
Yes.
at around that age.
Yes. Mhm.
And she was very like back to back with stuff and a lot
Yeah.
of school stuff, and there was a bit of a pressure there.
Yeah.
And she was kind of a reclusive child, kind of to herself,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
And almost when you released.
Yeah, it's that ripple. It's like that whole Tafiti thing when she starts like spreading those flowers, and that you can't help but have other things or have other people grow like around you. Like whether we choose to believe it or not, we have like this quantum enmeshment.
Yes, we
you
do.
know,
Mhm.
and we make a difference in everything that we bring to our relationships and to the world. And yeah, and the one thing I would say is, yeah, just reflect on who you are. And if and if you're not happy with that, come face to face with it's scary, can be scary, but it's totally worth it and life changing. Yeah.
And it's usually not as hard as or bad as we think it's going to
No.
be.
Mm-mm.
What our imagination does is actually so much worse generally
Yeah.
than what we find. And so that's amazing. Anything else we didn't talk about, didn't cover? Anything else you want to say?
I can
There's
sit
so
here
much
forever.
No, I know.
No, they're like, but
yeah, no, we could talk for days
I
and
know.
days and days.
There's just so much stuff I could tell you. But no, that's pretty much like the gist of it. I was gonna go through that whole there was just that one quote that I was gonna read about neuroplasticity, if I could.
Yes,
Yeah,
you're my
I
fellow
love
brain
it.
nerd and book nerd. I love it.
So this was Dr. Joe Dispenza. So he says the gift of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire, create new circuits at any age, is a result of input from environment and our conscious intentions. Is that we can create new level of mind. There's a sort of neurological out with the old, in with the new, a process that neuroscientists call pruning and spouting. It's what I call unlearning and learning, and it creates the opportunity for us to rise above our current limitations to be greater than our conditioning or circumstances. And I feel like that's what mind change does, really, in like a gist. You're not defeated or defined by your circumstances or your past, and that our brains are neuroplasticity, that it's malleable. And that's amazing to know. That's very powerful.
Yeah, at any age. Because I know
at any age
where we are in age, which
Yes.
I'm fine with, actually.
Me too.
I think there used to be this idea that when people reached a certain age of maybe our age group, that they were that's the way they're always going to be.
Yeah. And
that's who they are. That's how they're always going to be.
And it's not at all. Yeah, and it's not at all. And like with any, like brain is muscle, like with anything, like whether it's practicing, like I said, like those like little glimmers or rewriting, interrupting, loops of memories. So if you're going to keep playing the same thing, why not play something that increases your dopamine and serotonin versus release catecholamines and cortisol and brain fog. So we have a choice to do that, and I think that's amazing that we have that choice. And again, like, but you have to read. I keep saying, because you have to read the book. Like, it just doesn't poof knowledge. Because like I sought out different things, but reading the book, module 1, module 2, it took me quite a while. It's been like 5 years or something. But I feel like during that growth and process, that was my journey. And I'm totally okay with that because I came out at the end going like, wow, this is amazing. Yeah. And I feel like I keep growing in my journey. So
yeah. And I love you have the perspective of having read the books, having done the online courses, and even having gone to a retreat.
Yes.
Yeah. So you've kind of done the whole gamut, and you are, I mean, listen, I loved you from the minute I met you, but you are a really different person in the greatest way. And I love having relationships and friends like that continue to level up, where we're not like, well, this is just who I am. Sorry. That like you continue to just grow and change, and I love it. It's been an amazing experience.
Thank you.
So thank you for being my friend.
I'm gonna hug you.
Okay, we're hugging.
Okay.
That's all the mic stuff goes.
Okay.
There you go. So you'll have to go to YouTube if you want to see the hug. As awkward as that probably just was.
I know. You can cut that part out.
All right. So thank all of you for joining us on the Mind Change podcast. We really appreciate you. And please go to the YouTube channel and let us know if something in particular hit you from this episode, or if there's something else you'd like for us to talk about and cover. We really do love to hear from you. And also, as you leave us those wonderful 5-star reviews on your favorite podcast platform, please go ahead and just leave us a little note there. We read all of them. So thank you again, and thanks for being with us as we endeavor to change the world one mind at a time.